And hi, everybody. This is Mike Andrews. I'm Managing Director here at Novastore. I'd like to thank you all for attending today. It's a large crowd we have, so we'd like to keep things moving along and focus on providing more content and less sales. So a quick housekeeping note. There will be a question and answer session at the end of this webinar. If you think of any questions during the presentation, you can either save them for the end or use the question function on your attendee control panel. It's a little red or orange arrow that you can have there that can open it up and then submit your questions. You can do that even during the presentation while they're fresh in your mind. They'll just queue up and we can go back to them. So if you don't see any panel, just click that orange arrow and it'll expand for you. So we'll not be answering any questions during the presentation. They will all be handled at the end, so stick around. We'll do our best to cover them all for you. So now, today's webinar is the first part in Novastore's Backup for the Rest of Us expert series of 3 webinars that we'll be holding over the next few months that are focused on the ever-looming threat of ransomware. For this segment, we have recruited a ransomware expert to share their knowledge and teach us how to detect and identify a ransomware threat, share instructions on how to act on it when it happens, and more importantly, how to prevent it from happening in the first place. So in preparation, I just want to share some basic information regarding ransomware in the U.S., where most of our audience is from. Even if you don't fully know what ransomware is, we will teach you during this session, so you will know soon, but these statistics are quite staggering. In a nutshell, you're not safe. Unfortunately, at Novastore, our technical experts are receiving emergency calls multiple times a day. Just last week, we received a call from one of our partners, and it was their second incident in 3 days, and it was from the same end user. So it can hit multiple times to the same people. As you can see, 47% of U.S. companies have experienced a ransomware incident in the last year, 80% if you consider all threats. The U.S. is also the hardest hit by this threat, so it's some pretty scary stuff here. But anyway, for some good news, first I'm going to stop talking soon, and second, I'm handing the microphone over to the 2 experts that you signed up to hear. So just a quick introduction. You'll be hearing later from Kurt Yordaset, that's Novastore's resident backup expert on this topic. But at this moment, I'd like to introduce our special ransomware expert guest, Michael Jimba. Michael is not only an expert, he's also a ransomware victim. Michael is an IT administrator like many of our guests here today. He works at Fluger, a Denmark-based company engaged in the design, manufacturing, and marketing of paints, wallpapers, and other products for surface treatment. A place where actually watching paint dry is a job. In this role, he is personally responsible for the operation of over 300 servers and over 1,500 user accounts. He is also an IT business analyst, IT system architect, and has participated in several expert discussions on ransomware. Michael, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to learn from your experience.
Thank you, Mike, for the nice introduction. Actually, our customers are waiting for paint to dry. We are just making the paint wet. But anyway, let's jump to the agenda for today. As Michael said, I'm working at Fluger, and I have been hit by ransomware. So most of the examples you will hear from me are from live experience. Today I would like to show you on how to identify the threat in your environment, how I did it with the team of admins I'm working with, how to divert and remove it, and finally how to build a protection plan so you can be prepared for these issues. And then I will hand over voice to Kurt, our backup expert. Okay, let's begin. First of all, I would like to ask you a couple of questions, and because we would like to know who is attending, and if you could just ask 2 questions.
Okay, so you should all see the question posted right now. It's asking you a few questions with basically who you are today and what you're going to be, why you're attending, what's your top requirement here, so we can sort of customize the webinar to your requirements. I'm going to let this go for about 30 seconds to let everybody get their votes in, and then what we'll do is we'll share the survey with you, and you can see the results. So just a few more seconds. Okay, you snooze, you lose. We're going to share the results right now. So you can see quite the big leader here is you're interested in learning more about preventative measures. So you're in a good place. That's what a lot of our presentation is guided to around today. So I'll let Michael please continue.
Okay, so I will try my best to educate you well, so you will be well prepared for it. First of all, how to identify a threat and what is the threat. So let's list. We have listed 3 examples of those, but of course you can met more in daily operation because those bad guys are not sleeping. They are hardly working to develop another ones. One we have been hit in Flugger especially was a crypto ransomware. It encrypts the files and it encrypts a lot of files in our environment. More than a few million files has been totally encrypted in our environment. Another one is a lock screen ransomware. Maybe it's not so dangerous because it just locks the screen, but if you are not IT experienced, you might have a problem to unlock your computer and unlock your system. And the last one we have listed is master boot record blocking, and that's the same. You are not, if you are not IT experienced, you are not able to manage without any help. Okay. So let's.
Michael, excuse me. This is Kurt over at Novastore. I got a quick question for you. I was, I'm seeing all these different, options. Obviously, the way that people attack. Which of these threats do you think is the most prominent, or is hits the most often?
Of course, this crypto ransomware. It has been pretty well described in media. If you Google it, you probably find a lot of articles about it, and it is very dangerous because it damages the files and you are not able to unencrypt them by yourself. So you have to or either find a way, find a person, company, whoever to help you out, and believe me, but this is not easy. Or there is another option which is not recommended at all. Pay the ransomware guys who has infected your system to unencrypt those files so they are accessible again, and you have no assurance, or you are not sure that if you pay them, you will get those files back. So the crypto ransomware is the most dangerous one. Do you have any questions?
No, that was my main thing. Obviously with 3 options, it's always good to know which is the one to be on the lookout for the most, of course.
Yes. Okay. Let's see how it can get you. And one of the most popular ways of getting the infection is the fake emails. Very often you could see the email sent from a delivery company, shipping company, saying that your parcel hasn't been delivered and there are some problems, and you need to click the link in the mail to see what the problems are, or to redirect the parcel or send it again. And when you expect any parcel from the shipping company, then you could be in very big danger, because it is mostly probably that you will click those links If there is such a coincidence, you are in a very high risk to be infected. Another, of course, sources are existing botnet. This is a small program which could be injected to your system. For example, just for one user could bring the memory stick and plug it in to the computer, connect it to your network, and on this USB stick could be some danger program which could be copied to your system and waiting for to be activated in a special time or special conditions. You could be hit by drive-by download. It means that you could just visit the web page which look the same as original web page, but it could be a fake web page, it could be a hacked web page, and it could lead you to the software, or even it could ask you a question if you accept to download the software. But usually we have seen users which are not careful enough to read the content they have been presented. So they are clicking OK, because they would like to go to the content of the web page, and they are not noticing that the behavior of the web page is quite different, and sometimes they don't even know what they have clicked, and then they just download this sometimes on their invitation to the system. Of course, there are some bad free software which shows you that you are infected, and if you would like to fix your system or heal your system, just click this button, and then everything will do. Everything will be scanned for you, and your system will be cleared from viruses. Don't believe it. If you have an antivirus and there is a second web page or any web page which will show you that you are infected, don't believe it. Don't click on anything. And malicious online ads. This is the same like this bad free software. It can pop up on your web page, on any web page, and it can be so so professional built that it will look like some kind of original original content coming from the company you will know, but be suspicious. Don't click anything which you don't want. Okay, I think I have covered them, the sources. But if, for example, if you have been hit, if you downloaded it, if the user of your system has downloaded it, clicked something, what is the a symptom? What could be a symptom? Of course, first of the symptom could be a warning from your antivirus or ransomware software. But in Fluger we have used two vendors of the software, antivirus software, and it didn't help. We didn't have at that time anti-ransomware software, which we bought later. But antivirus didn't detect the system. Be advised that every antivirus software has some kind of delay with the updates. Even if they are updated every day, there could be some hours where the updates are not yet downloaded and your antivirus is not up to date, and these hours could be those danger hours where your system is not protected against these issues. Of course, you could notice some suspicious network activity if you are, of course, monitoring the network. Sometimes I have seen a lot of companies who has installed the software, the switches, and they are they have invested a lot of money into the very high-end switches, but they are not configuring them well enough to get those statistics and be alerted on time that there is something wrong with their network. And another one, it could be unusual slowness of the system. Of course, if you are operating your laptop, you would notice it immediately that something is wrong because your laptop is slowing down. But if you are working in a big company like Flugger and all the users are using terminal system, and sometimes they complain about the performance of the system, but the IT department is not aware about this performance issues, because the users are not calling, the users are not creating tickets. So, you know, it could be a symptom, but because of the users are not willing to contact with the IT, it might be very easily ignored. Another one, some files could be inaccessible. And in Flugger, actually, it was one of the indicators that something bad happened, because the users have started calling us, IT department, and start complaining that their files, which they usually use at work, they couldn't open it. They of course can find the file name, but the file name is it cannot be opened, and they don't know why. So it was one of the symptoms, but it was too late. And of course, redirection pop-ups. I think I have covered all warnings or symptoms.
So yeah, those are all actually really good warnings, Michael. This is Kurt again. I've seen, you know, any number of these in my experiences with ransomware, of course. Now, what, you know, typically, do you get one or do you get many of these warnings? You know, how does it normally present itself to you in your experiences?
Actually, as I mentioned before, if you look at, for example, in our situation, we had an increased amount of storage use at that time. We could monitor IOPS, and we are actually monitoring IOPS. We have a guy who is specialized in this, and we could detect that something wrong happens based on the storage IOPS analysis. But we thought that, of course, it was users who just start using our system heavily, and we just ignore it. So yeah, good question, and the answer is don't ignore any symptoms and learn on someone's experience, not on yours. And the second, of course, symptom was that users couldn't access the files. Do you have more questions?
No, actually, that's pretty much what I was looking for. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, how we can divert and remove ransomware threats? Okay, let's see what we can do if you have been hit, or if you suspect that something wrong happens in your system, or if you even witness some encrypted files. For sure, try to disconnect the system from the network or internet. Sometimes it is not simple, because if you are using a very big environment, IT environment, there is no simple switch to the internet. You cannot just turn it off. Of course, you need to warn users that something bad happens, and you need to warn users that the system, or some of part of the system will not be accessible for a period of time, and they will be noticed about further actions. And you have to, of course, be careful, because not if you turn off too much, you might endanger some business critical systems. But first of all, disconnect the system if you can. If you cannot, maybe you can disconnect storage, which could be affected, or which has been affected, or maybe which has not yet been affected. Maybe to cover it, to protect it against the threat. In our situation, we have identified the source, and it was one of the users who had downloaded the ransomware and activated it on his account. And this account has been locked, but it didn't mean that we have stopped the infection. Actually, we did lock the account, but we still witness that the files are still encrypted. So it is not 100% guarantee that if you lock the user who is the source of the infection, you will immediately stop the infection. Not. And of course, we identified this suspicious mail because we knew what was the user. We just interviewed the user. We have looked at the email box of this user with his permission, and based on it, we have warned uninfected users what not to do, or what can they expect on their mailboxes, and they shouldn't click on it, or they shouldn't open it. Okay, so how to build a plan of for ransomware prevention? In my experience, first of all, of course, if you are hit, you are building the crisis team and trying to identify the source, trying to identify the damage, trying to identify how to protect. But if you not yet been hit by the ransomware, then better is to invest in the better spam protection, identify how the threat may look like. As I mentioned, it may look like a regular mail from company from the shipping company, and it looks so professional that sometimes even I am wondering, should I open it? And I'm starting questioning myself, is it really for me? Is it really the parcel I'm sending or I have sent? And you know, if the users are well educated and they know how the threat can look like, it might help you in IT department to prevent against the infection. Of course, you could educate the users how to disconnect the system. If the user is using the laptop or PC, you can teach them how to disconnect it from the network, from the internet, or how to close it down, and maybe how to contact with the IT department, IT support. Don't wait. Be especially, or maybe you should even ask the users so that they will not wait until something bad happens, but if they feel that they have done wrong, just encourage them to contact with the IT and say it without waiting, because an hour or 2 hours later it might be too late. And of course, this is the mantra we are in IT repeating every time: how to store the passwords, and sometimes how to use the external disks if you have a policy to use it. Just make sure that users are highly educated that this is the potential source of infection, which they are just injecting to the computer, and computer is connected to your system, so they could inject very easily the infection from the memory sticks they are using. For Fluger, we have a policy. We don't allow users to use the memory sticks, and if the user has such a demand, the memory stick is encrypted, and the user is specially educated. We know that this kind of users are educated against any threats which may happen. Okay, so what you shouldn't do when you have been hit with the ransomware. First of all, don't panic. As I mentioned before, organize yourself if you are an IT guy, or if you are working in IT department, organize the IT department to build some kind of crisis team, and divide your team if you have enough resources to identify the source, to identify the damage, to identify how the infection could be stopped, and maybe another team how to inform the users about the problem you just witnessed. Second, and the most also very important one, is don't pay the ransomware guys, because it will encourage them. If you will pay them, it will encourage them to build another ransomware, to infect more companies, to spend more money on more sophisticated attacks. So if you can, don't pay them. If you cannot, because you don't have a backup, for example, well, if you pay them, you don't have a warranty that you will get your files back. Don't use brute force. Don't click on unexpected email attachments. I mentioned it before. Don't, the email could look very professional, so don't click on anything in the emails, and especially in attachments. And if you have an attachment, if you are going to open it, and if it will ask you to, if you would like to enable the macros, of course, ask yourself a question again. Was this mail to me, and was this mail supposed to be sent to me, or were I waiting for this mail? Did I expect this mail? Did I expect this attachment? Okay. If not, if you have doubts, just delete the mail. If someone would like to get in touch with you, they will try again with another mail or something. And don't give everyone the same access rights. And this is a very important one. Actually, this was one of the reasons in Fluger why we have been hit so much. As I mentioned, maybe I didn't, maybe I mentioned before, in few hours we have seen over 1 million files encrypted. Because the user who has been infected, or who just invited the threat to our system, had rights to the very basic level folders of our file systems. And this user especially was a member of the how to say it, I don't remember it was the group, this is a standard group, authorized users. So he was a member of the authorized users, and every authorized user had an access, read and write access to those basic folders, to these low-level folders of our file systems. So I admit we were not careful enough to keep the access rights in a good condition, in a good, in proper way. But we have evolved, and we have made it proper now. Okay, so what to do with ransomware? First of all, educate your users. I mentioned it before. I will mention it maybe a few times more. Of course, keep your backup offsite. And of course, do your backup. Sometimes I have seen companies who are not using a backup at all. So please do your backup and keep your backup offline, just offsite. It shouldn't get an access to the system. It shouldn't. The ransomware shouldn't get an access to the backup files. Otherwise, it will encrypt them, for example. Of course, scan and filter mail content. We had an anti-spam, and of course we still have, but we have moved to another solution which is much better, because the old anti-spam software didn't catch the mail which was danger. So invest in your anti-spam and invest in your filter email system to be better protected. Configure the intrusion prevention. If you know how the mail looks like, which bring the infection, just try to define it in your intrusion prevention system and try to be protected. Of course, use the system updated. It means that install all security updates which are released from the vendors of the software which we are using. For example, Microsoft is releasing a lot of security updates. Don't wait, install them, because if you don't install, you are in security, in a danger situation, because it might be a security hole which this patch covers. And one of the lessons we have learned from our experience is the secure DNS. If we had a secure DNS service on our system, then we could be probably we would not be hit by this ransomware. Why? Secure DNS is checking the if the web page you are referring to is secure enough or has a good reputation. And if you look at the mail which has been sent to this user, which actually click on the link in the mail, this link lead him to the web page which was hosted on not secured or not on the host or on the server which hasn't have a good reputation. So probably if we had a secure DNS on site before our issue, we would avoid this whole situation. So learn from my experience, not yours, again. And as I mentioned before, configure your backup solution because it will save your business. If we wouldn't have those files backed, then of course our business wouldn't survive. And this I think I will pass the voice to Kurt, our backup expert.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. This is Kurt Yorset. I'm a senior systems engineer here with Novastore. As has been mentioned before, ransomware is one of the greatest threats to our current IT infrastructures. Not only is it a fast-acting, but it's also ever-evolving. I'm only going to talk a little about how a solid backup solution is your best weapon to defend against these threats. There's no better way to recover from a ransomware attack than identifying the threat, removing the infection point from your environment, and of course having a stable backup system in place for restore. Being proactive in the approach to setting up a backup system can remove any worry about paying to unlock your sensitive company data. If little thought is given to your backup solution, then it is very much like having no solution at all. The first steps to building a successful backup solution, of course, are going to be sure you invest in a strong backup software that can be flexible and fit the needs of your environment. Because of that, I always joke that each company's infrastructure is similar to a snowflake. You know, no two are completely alike. Each requires a slightly different approach to backup strategies. It is important to also work with a professional in setting up the backup scheme and to assure the best possible protection, as well as a rotating schedule that keeps you protected with multiple copies of your data. By working with a professional, you're assured that you're going to get the best advice and not have to be hit once in order to, hopefully learn from that lesson, so to speak, and come back stronger on the other end. It's better to do it right the first time, in my personal opinion. Let's see. It's an often overlooked action is the need to test your recovery process periodically. I've worked with a few clients, and they have quarterly backup recovery drills set for their sensitive systems. This investment in time is very small and gives them a confidence that if they were hit by anything, that the recovery could be done in very short order with limited downtime to the overall corporate infrastructure. While having backups available on the network or on the fly restores is very handy, it's indispensable in today's companies. It is equally important to have a copy of your backup data either offline or off-site. A strong backup plan generally follows what we call the 3-2-1 backup rule. That would be, to sum up, kind of 3 copies at minimum of your data on a minimum of 2 different media types, such as maybe it's a disk or tape or cloud, or a combination of the 3. And also at least 1 is completely off-site, because in case of a major disaster outside of ransomware, it could be tornado, it could be flood, it could be anything. Electrical surges, anything can happen to your infrastructure. It's always good to have a completely offline, safe, recoverable backup set available to you. Actually, I have one experience recently with one of our clients. I'd worked with them on recovering from a ransomware attack at one of their own clients. They're actually an MSP, and they work with any number of different customer environments. On this particular occasion, they received a call from the client, which is a doctor's office, that had been hit and that all their patient records were compromised. To make matters worse, the customer happened to be on vacation at the time. They immediately cut their trip short and headed back to help out with the situation. I noticed that they were in need of some help and reached out after hours to see if I could do anything for them. We were all able to discuss the situation, and because they had followed a lot of the concepts I've mentioned here earlier, the restore was a complete success, and the doctor's office was back up and running by the next morning with no downtime or impact. It was basically transparent to all their clientele, and no patient records were lost. So it's kind of a testament to having a good, solid solution in place can help you come back from something completely unscathed, or back up without any loss to your bottom line. So pretty much what I have on this from my side. I think I'm going to go ahead and toss this back over to Mike here.
Okay, well, Kurt, Michael, great job. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. So in summary, some key takeaways. They always say you can't manage what you can't measure, and much the same here, it appears. It's difficult to avoid ransomware if you don't know what to look for or how to find it. After this webinar, I'll have the Novastore team send you all some ransomware awareness checklists for ongoing reference. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't do at least one backup plug. So, but seriously, no matter what solution you use, hopefully Novastore, please back up. We're not shoving a round peg in a square hole here just to ride a hot topic. Michael is not being paid by Novastore, I promise. We're presenting this topic because backup is one of the top weapons in the fight against ransomware. So defense, as always, is the best offense. Let's discuss prevention. Make a plan and keep revisiting it, and then revisit it again. If you don't revisit, something else might just make a visit, and it rhymes with handsome bear. Sorry, folks, I had to do it. It was a dare. So now for the underlying message of this whole presentation. If you leave with anything today, just remember one word: educate. You may know what you're doing, but you can't control everyone else's actions. The more you educate, the easier your job will be. So now, before we take your questions, in exchange for your time today, I would like to make a special offer to all in attendance. After the presentation, please go to this link, novastore.com/ransomware-checkup, and register to have Kurt or one of his Novastore technical experts schedule a ransomware health check on your environment. This is just another free service that we offer as part of Novastore's backup for the rest of us approach to business. Also, when you go to that link, please register for our next educational expert webinar on ransomware scheduled for May 25th, later this month. We'll be tackling ransomware once again and how it applies to the world of regulatory compliance. Our expert speaker will be the CEO of the Compliancy Group, the leading source for advice on dealing with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, better known as HIPAA. Now, hopefully you've all had some time to gather any questions you have. We're now going to open up the floor for about 5-10 minutes to respond to these questions. As I stated earlier, it's a very large crowd, and we got a lot of questions lined up. So we might not have time to answer them all, but you have my promise that our team will at least give you a response to your questions at a future time, most likely within 24 hours. So please, if you have more questions, either direct them to Michael, Kurt, or both. Guys, take it away.
All righty, thank you, Mike. All righty, I'm kind of going through some of the questions we've got here, see if we can touch on a few of the more common requests in just a moment. Let's see. Alrighty, this one might be a good one for you, Michael. One of the users here has actually put a question out about can they use the user account control feature of Windows to stop CryptoLocker from encrypting files, and would running a guest account instead of the administrator account prevent a ransomware from running the actual exe that it's coming from?
It depends. To some extent, yes, it can. The guest account can stop, but you never know what the threat you are facing, and it might happen, but it will use the guest account to compromise the rest of the accounts of the system. So it might happen that even if you allow users to work on a guest account without administrator privileges, the system will be infected, and the system will be very heavily affected. So I would say, well, better control than be sure that you have done everything what you could do.
Okay. I've had a couple of other users have actually asked a similar question to each other. They were wondering what type of anti-ransomware utilities that you have either used in your environment or have used before.
What type of the ransomware solution we have bought after this?
Yeah, the protection, some kind of protective measure. I know like Malwarebytes has an anti, and there might be a couple others out there as well.
Yeah, we have actually we desperately looked for help outside because we faced a danger or issue which we had no experience. And we found a Signet company who has helped us, and they have a service which we could buy, and we had to install a special server, dedicated server, which is not joined to our domain. It is a standalone server, and we could scan our system using the agent or agentless method, and based on this we could analyze what the system has been hit, where those infected files are laying, and then this also is helping us now today to prevent our system from the infection.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you, Michael. I've seen a number of other people are actually asking another similar question that's not so much tech related as it is presentation. We are going to be packaging the actual slides themselves, as well as we're going to see if we can get a recording of this session and try and have that sent out to everyone who was in attendance today. So hopefully that answers, anybody who may have had issues with doing some of the slides, possible connectivity issues, or just wishes to revisit it a little bit later and kind of go through things a little more in depth on their own when they have some more time. So one of the few things in IT that any of us ever get is time. Wearing so many hats every day usually takes up a lot of time and a lot of effort. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, okay. Let's see, I've got someone who has, let's see, they've actually limited their systems to browsing only trusted websites. How safe am I? Well, it's actually a good start. Have you seen that or attempted to do that yourself, Michael?
Yes, actually, we have started from this point. When I had started at Flutter, we had this exactly this policy. We had a list of allowed web pages which could be browsed, but it was limiting our business a lot. And believe me or not, but business is like a water. It always finds its way. And IT will find it out the last. So just to be friendly to the business, IT decided to open all web pages to the business, for the business, and our users can browse any web page. But we were not smart enough. So again, learn on my experience and just invest in the secure DNS service. For example, it will cover some of the security issues you might have.
Perfect, Michael. Actually, somebody brought up a really good question. There was a couple people actually. Can I decrypt files without having to pay for the ransom? And I know a lot of people really want to know the answer to that one.
Actually, I think Cisco guys made pretty good laboratory tests on those first samples of the encryption, and they succeed to create some kind of decrypting tool. But since that time, we have seen so many different encryption algorithms from the ransomware that you are not sure which one have been used at your system if you have been hit. So better to say is not. You are not able to unencrypt the files because you might have the encryption algorithm, or you have been hit by an encryption algorithm which hasn't been yet properly looked through or diagnosed, whatever, to build some extra fix tool. So I wouldn't hope that you could unencrypt the files.
Okay, guys, we have time for about one, maybe two more questions if they're short questions, because we're coming up on the hour and we know how precious your time is here. So, Kurt, do you have any more?
Well, let's see. This is a good overall one that pretty much should apply to most anyone with an IT staff. What should you tell your staff about ransomware for preparations and such?
Good question. You could tell a lot, but the best is to give an examples. You can give me as an example. But anyway, first of all, Google examples of the ransomware and try to give the information with the small pieces so they can easily remember them, so they were no overwhelmed with the information they get from you. And second, as I mentioned, give some examples of real incidents, of real issues which have happened in the business similar to yours. So the imagination of the users or the staff will be better, but they are not, it might happen also to them if they are not careful enough.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's it's always a good thing to know. How do you bring it to your staff, and how do you make them aware of recognizing? Because as you mentioned, it's easy to overlook some of the more subtle things, like, oh, it's just more usage, or it's just a little extra, system, and whatever we got on bandwidth, or oh, okay, things are happening, more I/O. But when it all comes down to it, being very meticulous and paying attention to your infrastructure, and not just pushing things to the side, but actively pursuing each little alarm that you get can help you hit and stop things ahead of time.
Precisely.
All right, that's going to end our question session. Like I said, we will get answers back to you. Michael, thank you so much. Kurt, thank you. And everybody in attendance, thank you so much for sticking around. Everybody stayed around for pretty much the entire webinar. We love to see that. And once again, we know your day is busy, so we're very happy you took an hour of your life to dedicate to this special topic. So we're going to leave you with that link again. So please feel free to take advantage of this free service where we'll do a webinar check for your environment. Thank you. Take care.